I'm Ryan. I'm a science teacher.
I'm Cheryl, and I slept through science.
Each episode will tackle a science question you may have learned in school, but can't quite remember or fully explain.
And I'll take the risk of asking the dumb questions so that we can all understand the science we slept through.
The bell has rung. Let's get started. Welcome to lesson 34. Today we are starting a new unit all about houseplants.
Yes.
Is that right, Cheryl?
Yeah.
Okay. Not what I normally would have thought of as a unit. Why are we talking about houseplants?
Well, I mean, it is kind of fun that we're doing some units that are not like traditional subjects in science because we all
Yes.
know that everyone slept through science. And so
I don't know about everyone,
we'll mix it up a little bit. But also we've talked a little bit about plants in our biology unit.
Mhm.
But I was thinking about the science that is around me, like directly around me.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of science in my house in the
That is
form
true.
of houseplants. And I
Living
feel
things.
like houseplants feel a little bit mysterious to me. So I thought, let's talk specifically about Cheryl's houseplants. And then you wouldn't let me call this unit Cheryl's houseplants. So it's called houseplants. And that's what we're talking about.
Are Cheryl's houseplants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Parentheses, Cheryl's houseplants.
I think this is probably the time where we should mention that between the two of us, you are much better at growing houseplants than I am. There have only been 2 plants that I have been able to ever keep alive in my house.
Really?
One of them is a lucky bamboo.
Okay.
And the other 2 are succulents. And those ones only from like very intentional like work on my part, because I have killed succulents before.
Me too.
Because succulents are not as easy as they say.
No, houseplants are not as easy as they say.
No, hence why I don't have a lot of houseplants.
Yeah.
But I do know about plants in general and some things about how they work. So hopefully between the two of us, we'll be able to figure out all the houseplant stuff.
Yay, I'm so excited.
So what are we going to do for our first question of our houseplants unit?
Well, I thought for our first question, we should talk about my first challenge that I ever had with houseplants, and that is overwatering. Because so I only got into gardening more in my adult years. I never really cared about it as a kid. I'm not really a flowers person, so that was never like an appealing thing for me. But then I was like, oh, I love to cook. And you can grow stuff in your garden that you can cook with. And that's very fun.
Yeah.
That was the first part of growing plants myself that was really appealing to me.
That makes sense.
And then I heard about like the benefits and the joy of houseplants, of like more oxygen in your house and just like having living things around you can be really joyful and something other fun to take care of. And so I got some houseplants and they all died. And I was talking to my sister about this. She's going to come up a lot probably in this houseplant unit because she's good with plants. And I was like, why are they dying? And she's like, well, you might be overwatering them. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense because my tomato plant outside, the more water, the better. Like it seems like for most outdoor plants that we have around here, the more water, the better. Like keep watering it. It's so good for it. If it's overwatered, that's fine. You know, and then you get these houseplants and they're like, too much water kills it. And I'm like, why is this thing that's good for it killing it? Doesn't make sense to me. And now I do it. And actually what I do now is I have these like little plastic bulb things with like a long, skinny, almost like a straw that comes out of them, and you fill it with water and then you just stick it in it. And the idea is like the plant just takes how much it needs, like until when the soil's dry is when more water goes in. So that's how I solved my problems now with overwatering, is the plant tells me how much water it needs.
There you go. And you just have to remember to refill those little insert things.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And you use that for all your houseplants?
Yeah. I have a tree in my house now and I use it on that one too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think at some point we may need to get some pictures of your houseplants.
Okay. That sounds great.
Maybe post them on our Instagram or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Overwatering kills plants. And you already sort of talked about what the question is, where you said, like, why does something that's good for a plant end up killing it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's dive into our pre-assessment. What do you think just initially, why might too much water end up killing a plant?
Oh gosh. Well, I know I've heard about like wet soil being bad
Okay,
for some plants. And I know that's how they suck up the water in the first place is through the roots. I guess we should cover that. I do know
okay.
that part. I learned as a
Okay,
kid, don't water the leaves, water where the roots are. Um,
okay, all right.
um, so I'm curious, like, if this house plant that prefers dry soil to wet soil on a daily basis, if it's sitting in wet soil, is it just going to keep drinking the water and then is it just more water
Mm.
than it needs? Or is it just damaging the roots because the roots are sitting in wet soil and they don't like that? And if it does just keep drinking the water and then it gets overwatered, like why do the leaves end up drying out because of that or turning yellow or falling off or getting weird when it seems like shouldn't they just like burst because they have too much water in their little cell
Oh, okay.
bodies? Um and because I also know like drainage is really important for plants. That's a whole thing with house plants is like because you don't want it peeing on your carpet. So then you have to figure out like
Wait, wait, you don't want it doing what?
peeing on your carpet.
Plants don't pee.
I mean, kind of though. Like, although actually, no, plant pee is probably more like sap than the water that overflows from that. So I guess it's plant puke. Then I don't know what it would be compared to. I'm just grossing you out by all these bodily functions
Oh,
compared
no,
to
no. I mean,
plants.
I teach biology. You're not grossing me out.
Okay.
I just think it's funny the way that you're processing what that liquid is. You think it's analogous to human pee. I find that interesting.
No, pet pee, because that's
Oh,
the other
pet pee.
wet spot I've had on my carpet before.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You don't have an old dog like I used to, so, it
No,
might be hard to
but
understand,
I
but
I did have an old dog growing up, so no, I do understand. Yeah. So what do you think that liquid actually is?
Well, it's water. It's just like the water overflowed, like the soil
Okay.
couldn't hold that much water.
Okay.
So it's water mixed with a little bit of soil that also
Okay.
probably washed out. Um, so it means the soil can only hold so much water,
Hmm.
which I guess makes sense because I don't think that's unique to soil. I think any solid small substance you could put in sand, you could put in a bunch of marbles. Like eventually
Mm-hmm.
there will be too much water if you keep pouring water into
Right.
the bucket of little things. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and so, but soil also feels really unique in that it's like a piece of the nourishing the plants, I guess. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like why the wet soil would be bad for some plants, and then other plants, if the wet soil is kind of wet, like they're really happy about it and thrive
Mm.
in that environment.
Okay.
Like for
Do
different
you
plants, you want to err on the side of overwatering or underwatering, and like it
so do you
depends on the
think it's
plant.
specific to plants or the location? Like if you took your tomatoes, you talked about your tomatoes just want as much water as you want. If you
Yeah.
brought those inside, do you think that they could be overwatered inside? Or do you think so that it has to do with location? Or is it the actual type of plant? Like tomatoes can't be overwatered.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I think it's the type of plant. I don't think it's the location.
Okay.
I think the location has a small part in it because if it's in a lot of direct sunlight, some of that water will evaporate. So you
Okay.
need more water just because of like losing the water. Also, when you have a plant outside, Like if it's planted in the ground, some of the water just keeps going into the ground. And if it's
Mhm.
planted in a pot outside and it overflows there, it's not such a big deal either. Um, but I think it's the plant. Like if you put a cactus anywhere, although a cactus holds water, but like I'm guessing it has to do with like where these plants are originally from. Like these house plants
Mm.
are, I think they're like maybe like plants from really sunny locations that don't get a lot of water, and so they don't need a lot of water. But why? Like, why is it bad for them?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that's plenty for us to go ahead and build a lesson around.
Yay.
In order to start talking about this and getting to the answer, I actually have one more question for you
Okay.
that I think was going to set the foundation for possibly the entire unit. I don't know. We'll have to see where all your other
Wow.
questions go. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Wow.
What do plants need in order to survive?
Oh no,
Like to
I thought
live?
you were going to ask me this question. Light
Okay.
and water.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, most of them need soil, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they all do. There's like
Okay.
air plants and stuff like that. Most of
Yep.
them need soil.
Yep. Okay. There's one other thing that plants need that you may not know and that I think a lot of people don't think about. Any guesses?
Nutrients that comes from soil. It doesn't
It
count as
does.
your own thing. Okay,
Yeah.
what's your thing?
Well, okay. I'll tell you this. It's something that we as humans and animals
Oh
need.
yeah, air.
Be more specific though.
Carbon dioxide.
Yep. And
Another gas, I'm gonna guess.
one that we think of that we need a lot.
Oxygen.
Yeah. Plants
Okay.
actually need oxygen also.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that is the key piece for the problem with roots if they're overwatered. Believe it or not, if plants are overwatered, they can drown.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That sounds so cruel then. I'm like
Yeah.
slowly drowning plants if I'm
Mm-hmm.
overwatering them.
Mm-hmm.
That's really sad.
It is really sad. So here's the thing. The leaves of plants does most of the gas exchange. So getting carbon dioxide and oxygen in and out, the leaves do a lot of that.
Okay.
But plants can't move those gases super efficiently. They don't have a circulatory system like we do, right? With blood, with a heart that pumps and moves things around. Nutrients do move through plants, but not nearly as quickly or as efficiently as they do in animals. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Like obviously the water does get from the roots up to the rest of the plant. So there is movement of needed things, but the oxygen that the leaves are able to get is not easily able to get all the way down to the roots. The roots actually pull oxygen from little air pockets that are in the soil.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because the roots are actually doing a lot of work. They're moving stuff in and out of the plant, right? They're absorbing water. They're absorbing other nutrients like you referenced. They're absorbing stuff. They're also like putting things out. They're growing, they're expanding. All of that takes energy. And they need oxygen to access that energy.
Oh, okay.
It's just like we do as animals.
Yeah.
So in order to break down the food, which are just sugars, you have to use oxygen. And plants have to do that just like animals have to do that.
Wow.
We usually don't think about it or hear about that. We usually think about, well, plants make their own food, and they do make their own food, right? Photosynthesis. I'm sure you've heard of that process.
Yep.
But after they do photosynthesis, they still have to break that food down in order to get energy from it, just like we do. And that's a process that you've probably heard of before called cellular respiration.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that term.
Yeah. We as animals do cellular respiration. We don't do photosynthesis. Plants do photosynthesis and cellular respiration.
Oh.
And that's the process that requires oxygen. And that's what the roots need to do. So they need their own access to oxygen.
That's why you want good drainage.
That's why you want good drainage. Now, one of the things that you talked about was we talked about indoor plants versus outdoor plants. And we talked about that tomato plant specifically.
Yeah.
And you said you thought it was the type of plant that made the difference. And yes, different plants have different tolerances for the amount of water that they can deal with and the amount of oxygen that they need, all of those pieces. However, it has less to do with that and more to do with when you have a plant in the soil, and you referenced this a little bit, it's way harder to overwater because it's in the middle of the ground and that water can just spread everywhere and just continue to go down. And so even if you fill a lot of water right away, think of, I know growing up, we had rhododendrons sometimes, and you would, or like my mom's roses, and you would, get the hose and you'd get a big kind of bit of water and it almost made like a little puddle around the base of the plant, but then it would slowly seep into the ground. And then the ground would just be wet, but that puddle wouldn't stay for a super long time because that water was seeping into the soil and spreading out, which really meant that it was pretty difficult to overwater or basically drown a plant if it's in a big amount of soil.
Interesting.
And I did a little bit of looking online, and with tomato plants specifically, if they're in a pot, even if it's outside, you really have to worry about overwatering because it's in a pot and the pot has a small constricted amount of water. And that's again, like you mentioned, why the drainage matters. Oftentimes there's drainage holes in the bottom of pots, right? So that the water doesn't just kind of collect and sit there.
Yeah.
One of the other things that can happen when you have really, really moist soil is that can facilitate the growth of like fungus and mold.
Yeah, I've had that happen before.
Yeah, because generally those like really moist environments.
You know what else happens with moist soil is that you get fungus gnats who like to lay eggs in moist soil, and then they like to be in your house a whole lot. And that's actually why I got one of those watering bulbs, is so then the top of the soil was staying dry and the water was going down below.
Okay, I don't think I've heard of fungus gnats. Those sound terrible.
They look like fruit flies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're not like icky. They're just like, it's annoying to have a bunch of bugs in your house,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You also talked a little bit about maybe the plants absorb too much water, and then you would expect the leaves would, get like puffy or explode, or I don't think you said explode, but they would get really, really big, as opposed to some of the other things that you said, like they would kind of wilt or they turn colors or things like that.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think you can sort of think through why they might start to wilt instead?
Well, because they're drowning. And so it's actually like more similar than I thought to them getting not enough water or not enough of something, is they're getting not enough oxygen.
Yeah.
So they are missing something, and that's why they're drying out or not their full green color.
Yeah.
Or things like that. Not because it's not really about the too much so much as it's about the not enough.
Right. Exactly. And then if you think about it, if the roots aren't getting what they need, then those roots are starting to die, which means the roots can't do their job of getting the water up to the rest of the plant. That's also why it doesn't happen right away. One of the things that's tricky about plants is everything moves slower in a plant than it does in an animal. And so we don't always see the results right away. Sometimes there's a delay and it doesn't seem like anything is happening because we can't see the immediate effects, even though sometimes things are happening. That also means you could overwater a plant one day and it'll probably be okay. One overwatering in general isn't going to kill a plant.
Yeah.
Depends on the plant. If it's extra sensitive, it could, but over time, continual overwatering is going to deprive it of the oxygen it needs, and it's going to cause issues.
Interesting.
And now it's time for your first houseplant quiz.
Oh boy, I hope I don't destroy this quiz. I was going to say kill it, but then killing it's like a good thing. I hope I kill it just like my first houseplant.
Okay, sure. I guess that works. Okay, first question. What are the things that plants need to survive?
Oxygen, water,
okay,
carbon dioxide,
Mm-hmm.
sunlight.
Yes. Great. Wonderful. Question number 2. What do the roots do for a plant?
They suck up water and they suck up oxygen.
Yes. Mostly the water one. They do also absorb oxygen, but that's mostly just for the roots themselves, not for the rest of the plant.
Okay.
But yes, they do both of those things. Okay. Why is overwatering a plant like drowning the plant?
Because then they can't breathe. They can't get oxygen in.
Where? Be a little more specific.
The roots. The roots
Okay.
can't get the oxygen that they need.
Yes.
And then they die.
Wah, wah. Sad day for the plant.
It's really sad to watch a plant keep dropping leaves day after day and wonder what you're doing wrong.
Yep. Okay. Last quiz question. Why does overwatering and underwatering a plant lead to a similar result?
Because in either case, they're not getting one of those 4 things that they need.
Okay.
So either they're not getting water, which they need, or they're not getting oxygen, which they need.
Partial credit.
Oh.
In both cases, the rest of the plant is not getting water because the root cells die because the root cells aren't getting the oxygen.
And
right? Because the rest of the plant, the rest of the plant can still get oxygen from the air. The leaves can do that if they need to, but they're not getting the water because the roots are dying.
Got it. Good clarification.
Yes. Okay, but you passed.
Yay!
There you go. And that's our first lesson about houseplants.
About
Do you feel like
Cheryl's houseplants.
About Cheryl's houseplants. Do you feel like you understand your houseplants a little bit better now?
Yeah, I definitely do.
Good. So it's a good unit for us to spend some more time on?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Same time next week?
Sounds great.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So why don't you pack up your stuff and get ready for my closing remarks. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at I Slept Through Science or on Twitter at Slept Science.
If you have dumb science questions like I do, please send them to us. You can email us at isleptthroughscience@gmail.com, or you can even send us a voice memo and we'll play it on the podcast.
Please rate and review our podcast to tell other people what you think about it, subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode, and share about our podcast on social media.
Thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. Okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
The bell doesn't dismiss you. I dismiss you.